I have notes. That's how prepared I am. I have the white papers. It's in the white papers. I'm going to wave this around at you the way Alex Jones waves around health, World Health News subscription feed pieces of paper. So today I want to talk about the different types of engaging in politics, because I think that when I tell people, oh, I'm somebody who's passionate about politics, or I'm like, oh, one of my hobbies is politics, you get some weird looks. And so I want to talk about what politics actually is for me, and by extension, what the goals of this video podcast series are going to be. So I've divided the different ways people talk about politics into different types. Like those college humor videos they used to have, the 7 guys you'll date in college or what have you. Well, this is the 7 different types of engaging in politics, right? So the first type is the anti-political. This is the person, you've met this person, you probably are this person, most people are this person. This person hates politics, they don't want to talk about politics. They hate when politics becomes too explicit in songs or TV shows. They're like, oh God, why do they have to make it political? They really do not enjoy politics. I think there's good things about this type of person. I don't want to make fun of them too much. I was them for the longest while, and I don't want to hate on that. One of the good things I think about this type of person is that I think there's a lot of humility in saying to yourself, hey, I don't know anything about this, so I'm not going to express an opinion, right? To say, I know I'm uneducated on this issue, it's just not my area of focus. I know a lot about other things. I'm doing other important stuff. There's lots of important stuff. It's not all politics, right? They're like, I'm doing other important stuff. I don't need to know about your important stuff. And because I don't know about your stuff, I don't want to engage because I don't want to say something stupid. I don't want to say something wrong and uninformed. I recognize that I'm uninformed, so I'm just not going to engage at all, right? I think there is genuinely something good and humble and respectable about that position. That's the position one of my best friends has, and I think that he is in the right to have that position. That's the right approach. If you aren't interested in politics, it's probably smart to kind of stand back a bit. But there are problems with this too, right? A couple of the problems is I think that one of the main reasons that they're avoiding being engaged in politics is because they don't want to get yelled at. They don't want to have fights. And I have 2 problems with that. One is, if you've ever just like gone out in the world and had a normal conversation with a normal person, they're so boring. They're so boring these days. Conversations are terrible. Boomer conversations are the worst. And I think it's because boomers haven't engaged with this weird schizo Gen Z shit, okay? Their conversations are always like, the weather lately is so nice, isn't it? It's so much sunnier than I expected it to be. That's so uninteresting. I like the deep shit. I like the what is the meaning of life? What are we doing this for? What are your core values that you want your society to respect? I like the deep talk. And I think that being sort of apolitical is shutting yourself off from deep talk, so that you're kind of creating the conditions that every conversation you have is going to be sort of hollow and boring in that small talky sort of way. My other criticism is that we should be getting better at having these conversations without yelling at each other. If you're afraid of engaging with politics because everybody's just yelling at each other, that is valid, but it's also something you can help fix by learning to not yell at each other so much. I think politics is as intense as it is because it's serious issues. People's lives are on the line. And I think that's important. And because it's important, people take it seriously. I think that's a mistake. I think that politics needs to be fun because there's a lot of people that are alienated. They're not voting. They're not showing up to town meetings. They're not showing up to their local government. They're not getting involved. They're not doing anything, right? And anybody who is involved is constantly 24/7 talking about how do we get these people involved? How do we get the young people to care? How do we get them to engage? Do we need to post more clips to TikTok? How do we get them involved? You know, and I feel like it's a huge error to want these people to get involved and then to tell them it's super, super important, and if you say the wrong thing, you're killing people. Like, that's not going to make them want to get involved. They want to have fun. They want to play around. They want to be creative. They want to be free-thinkery little contrarian little bitches on the internet and type little contrarian hot takes on the internet. And that's fun. So let them do that. If it gets more people to participate and engage, I say by all means let them do that. So that's the first type, the anti-political, and I think that they're valid, they're humble, but it would be nice if we could make politics more accessible to them, more fun for them, so that they don't have to be anti-political quite so much, right? So type number 2 of my 7, remember there's going to be 7 of these types. Type number 2 of my 7 types of engaging in politics, the national legacy news viewer. This person is either watching liberal news or conservative news, right? Those are the two genders, if you will. The liberal news, CNN, MSNBC, what have you, it's a market, I think. I think it's a company. I think it's doing good work. There's important journalism going on. But I think first and foremost, they have liberals who want to hear their opinions parroted back to them. And these are companies that make money by delivering the product people want. So I think liberal news tells liberals everything that you already felt like was true is objectively true, and here's a bunch of stories that prove it. Here's a bunch of stories that prove you're objectively right, you're objectively correct. You're so right. Don't even sweat. Don't even sweat. You're so right, right? And same thing with right-wing news. There might be degrees of difference. I do kind of think Fox News is less reliable than like AP or whatever. I'm not blind to that, but I do think that both of them have a degree of bias and a degree of sort of market logic, where their goal is just to feed you your own views back to you. And the National Legacy News viewer, they have a couple of problems, right? That's one, is the partisanship and the binariness of politics. The other thing is that everything is national for them, right? Because of the way the news is, because they're watching Fox or CNN and they're covering national topics. Everything is about the president. Everything is about Congress. It's barely even about Congress. It's usually about the president. But it's almost never about their state legislatures, their local governments. And people will tell you all the time, if you want to make a real difference in politics, then you have to care about those stuff too. You have to care about the stuff that is more local to you and which maybe can't be talked about on the national news, but is still important and is going on in your neck of the woods. And anybody who is getting all of their political information from what I would call sort of political junk food news, they're not getting that local information. And I think that's a huge blind spot for them. And the last thing is I think they're attention grabbing. I said before, I think they're primarily out to get money, right? So they prioritize issues that I think, personally, are less important than other issues. Personally, I think what policy gets passed by the president is more important than the president's personal scandals or dumb things that they tweeted, you know? But dumb things that the president tweeted are news now because they're attention grabbing and they make money, and the news stations want to make money. So I think those are some of the flaws, some of the blind spots of engaging with national news. But the good thing is you're going to get a lot of information about what's going on in the White House, and you're going to get it through a framework, a narrative, a story, so you can understand it and contextualize it. Those are the plus sides, right? Type 3, okay? Type 3 is the local engaged citizen. I like this group a lot. I like this group of people a lot more than the other groups of people. These are the groups of people who are focusing on their local government. They're reading their local newspaper. They are usually active. They're trying to actually be like a good citizen, do their civic duty, and get out and like go to their local town meeting and participate. A lot of the time, they're not even as ideological as like a national news viewer, which is kind of nice, right? But they have some problems. Problem number one is that they have their own little language. A lot of times they're very insular because they're literally in a community, and they have their own little sort of pet issues that have happened in the neighborhood. When I first got involved in politics, I kept hearing about this one education issue in this one town where funding was being cut in one school in one town, right? And because I didn't know about that issue, there was almost a stigma of like, oh, what, you don't even know what's going on, man. You don't even know what's going on in your own backyard. But when I did look into the issue, I found out that it was just the same old usual privatization of our education system that a lot of Republican politicians are doing. Whether you're for or against that, I don't want to lose you if you're in favor of a privatized education system. But that is a thing that is going on nationally, internationally, that is widely discussed and talked about, and we know about it. And just because somebody doesn't know about the specific thing that happened in this neighborhood to this person, and they don't know all the names of all the local politicians, doesn't mean they don't know what's going on sometimes. You know what I mean? So that's one problem. The other problem is that they tend to lack a broader ideological vision. So because they see their problems as very insular, as very problems of their neighborhood and their sort of political people in their neighborhood, a lot of times they want to join up with anybody pushing a narrative, right? They're very in the status quo. They're very like, how do I get things done here and now in my, like, pragmatically, here and now in the status quo. And so you don't get a lot of people in this group who are ideologically engaged. Which brings me actually pretty seamlessly to my next group, the single issue voters. This is type 4, the single issue voter. This person has one issue that they care about. It's pretty predictable, right? They usually have something that everybody else in all the rest of these groups doesn't have, which is super important. They usually have life experience. If you're super, super passionate about one issue and none of the rest of them, it's usually because it's affected you personally in some way, or you just really love smoking weed. Those are the two options. You either just really, really love smoking weed, and you gotta have that legalize it sign, or you're, for example, a sex worker, somebody who actually was participating in sex work and cares about what happens for policy regarding sex workers because you were in it and you lived it, and so you might not even consider yourself political. Sometimes you'll see people show up to government hearings and they'll be like, I'm not left-wing or right-wing. Why are you talking about me like this is a left-wing or right-wing thing? This isn't a left-wing or right-wing thing. This is a my life and here's what happened to me thing. You know what I mean? So that's one of the advantages of that group. Of course, the downside is that they don't pay attention to anything else. They don't pay attention to anything outside of their one issue. So that's sort of the pros and cons of their worldview. Type 5, the ideologue. So, ideologue is a word with negative connotations, but I don't mean ideologue in a bad way. I mean ideologue in a very good way, actually. These people, maybe they don't watch the national news, but they have a source of information. A lot of times it'll be, if you go to like a Barnes & Noble and you go to the magazine section, you'll find the ideologues literature. Okay, it'll be Dissent magazine, or it'll be maybe a communist magazine if you're in a communist organization. So these are like socialist magazines. These are alternative politics. They're not Democrats, they're not Republicans, they're socialists, right? Or they'll be reading Reason, which is, again, I think, very intelligently written material about politics, but it's not the news. It's not single issue. It's broader than that. But they're not Democrats, they're not Republicans, they're free market libertarians. They have their own ideology, their own perspective, and that's really what they're about. That's what they're pushing for. The ideologue, I think, is great. I love ideologues. I really do. I think I am more ideological and less any of the rest of these categories. Most of the rest of these categories I don't super fall into, at least not naturally. In terms of what I do in my free time, I learn about ideologues. And I learn about every ideologue. I want to find every ideology, every worldview, and I want to know how it gets held up and what makes it tick. Because a lot of times they have a handful of core beliefs and values that sort of lean up against one another like a teepee and make their worldview work. And I want to pick that apart, like a little kid picks apart a cell phone and puts it back together. That's just a little bit about me, right? Ideologues also, I think, dominate young people more than older generations because YouTubers are ideologues, TikTokers are ideologues. More often than not, they're not just delivering news, they're delivering an ideological perspective. So pros and cons of ideologues obviously are that, one, they might be too ideological. They might not pay enough attention to local issues. They might not pay enough attention to issues that fall outside of their ideology. They might get stuck in their box. I know a lot of people in politics who will choose a worldview because of one issue, right? Maybe they're very pro-choice, so they decide they're a liberal because they're very pro-choice. But then when the topic of another issue like gun control comes up, they'll be very pro-gun control because they're liberal, because they're pro-choice, but they won't know why. They won't know why they're pro-gun control. They just know the team they chose. And that's the problem that comes with a lot of ideologues, right? So type 6, I hate this type. I hate this type so much. There's no good side to this. I'm sorry, there's no good side to this one. This is the election tracker. This is the worst. This is because of our national election cycle where it takes like a fucking year for somebody to actually get elected after the start of the first primaries in New Hampshire, right here in New Hampshire. Because of that process and because of the news constantly reporting on every single primary, one at a time, and then the general, and they do it for the states, and they do it for the national, and they do it for everything. Because of that, there are too many people that their primary way of engaging in politics is looking at polls and running polls and wondering who's going to win. And these people will talk about, like, in some ways, I guess here's the pro. I'm trying to be positive here. Here's the good thing about them. They know rhetoric. They know strategy. They know how to reach people. And they know what positions and what rhetoric to lead with that has failed in the past. Right? But on the other hand, that creates a problem where they care way too much about rhetoric. They care way too much about, oh, that candidate will never win. Look at, he'll never win over the center. Or he'll never win over voters in district blah 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 because they believe insert X here. So I don't think that this, I think this is what most people think of when they think of politics too, and that's why it's frustrating to me so much. When I tell people I'm interested in politics, what they picture is a person who chooses to put their entire identity either into Donald Trump or Joe Biden, and then to watch people endlessly talk about, oh, I wonder who's gonna win. I wonder who's gonna win. Oh, I can't imagine him winning. I can't imagine the other guy winning. And that's not the most important thing about politics. The most important thing about politics is getting your own values straight, your own principles straight, and then engaging on a local level. So, what am I trying to do? This is type 7. Type 7 is me. What am me? What am me doing? I am trying to combine sort of local politics and ideological politics and personal life experience, right? I'm trying to do my best to be the best of all worlds. For anybody living in New Hampshire, I want to talk to activists. I want to talk to people who have served in office, because that's a bit of a blind spot for me, because I get most of my information from books. I don't really know enough about the real world legislative process. I want to help be an explainer. I want to be a filter that can teach you. Hopefully, you're in New Hampshire. Maybe you're not in New Hampshire. I don't care. You can still learn from me. I'm going to try and filter the information that they have through my, hopefully, ability to explain things succinctly. My goal, I say as this video gets longer, my goal is to connect you with local politicians trying to create change, and to connect the world of ideologues, right? Like I said, people who have perspectives that aren't on mainstream national legacy news a lot of the time, to try and connect them with the real brass tacks of government in my local area in New Hampshire. Get it all together. Get the ideologues, the localness, the personal life experience in my area, all in one place, so that you don't need to keep up with every single medium with which you could engage with politics, because there's too many, and we could all do with just a little bit less of it.